Land Trust took possession of the land. And there is a little drawing here, actually, and we'll talk a little bit about this drawing too. And that is by Elmer Hobbs, who lived right down the road. It's kind of based on his drawing there, and we'll talk a little about the Hobbs as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about North Saco. So this is kind of, we always talk about in here, especially at the Saco Museum and the Dyer Library, we're always talking about downtown Saco, the historic district of downtown Saco. We rarely ever pay attention to the North Saco side. So this is a very interesting look at North Saco life, which was really kind of its own little bubble life in Saco. So it's kind of interesting to take a look at that. So just to talk about the site a little bit. So here is, this is a very cool map that is produced by the Maine Fisheries Association that shows all the riverlets and everything going around in Maine. Over here we see, this is the site right here. I've made a little marker over here, Watson Mill Road, and the Nonsuch River crosses the Watson Mill Road over here. I actually live right here on Wedgwood Drive, so I'm very familiar with the site. Watson Mill Road, Nonsuch River goes through here. So Nonsuch River, we'll talk about Nonsuch River here a little bit, actually originates somewhere here in the Saco River. And the Saco River right here is what's called Stackpole River. And there's a Stackpole Bridge over there off Simpson Road over there. So it kind of rises in that area. And then you can see the heath is right here. So the river's right here, the heath is right here. Bunch of brooks, estuaries. It's a very boggy, right? You look at all the streets in that area. They're called Flag Pond Road, Heath Road, right? Ash Swamp Road. So it's this very kind of boggy, wet land area, all of North Saco. In fact, the Native Americans back then did not roam these lands too much. In fact, there are records in the old records of a lot of Native American ambushes of colonists patrolling the heath area. So the Native Americans knew that it was not a place you can really run, and it was a great place to corner colonists in the heath. So it was this kind of always this wet land area. So the Nonsuch River crosses up there, goes into the Scarborough side. In fact, the Scarborough City and Scarborough Land Trust has done a lot of protecting of the Nonsuch River corridor as well. So where does the Nonsuch River go? Well, the Nonsuch River actually kind of follows Holmes Road along Scarborough, and then it goes to the mall, actually. And then it kind of follows down through a Black Point here, and it kind of switches across Black Point Road a few times, and then it dumps out here into the Pine Point area. We know that as Scarborough Marsh. So that beautiful marshy area that you see when you're going down Black Point Road, that is actually the latter half of Nonsuch River. And the Nonsuch River also is called Nonsuch Brook. There's Nonsuch Pond. It's just these little things, and it grows, and it narrows, and it widens, and its widest part are obviously in the marsh section. So in 1871, Stephen Watson, which Watson Mill Road is named after today, farm and mill for sale in 1871. He put this out on New Year's Day, situated in Saco on the Nonsuch River, so-called, 6 miles from Saco Depot. Farm contains 100 acres of land. It's well watered, well fenced, cuts 20 tons of hay annually, has a good orchard, good buildings, plenty of wood for home use. Said mill is situated on the farm with a patent tuttle wheel, contains 1 up and down saw, 1 shingle machine, 1 bolting saw, and plenty of room for any other machinery that may be wanted. The mill is all in good repair and in running order with plenty of custom work to do. So a turnkey business, right? Hey, here I have everything here for you. You just buy it and you can start your own sawmill. Stephen Watson on New Year's Day in 1871. This is not actually the Watson Mill, but I wanted to show what a up and down saw is. So this is a very old version, actually a lot more pleasant than the rotating circular saw that buzzes and zzz. This is, you know, you hear the river running and the little gentle saw, right? Very nice, pleasant kind of scenery for that. But Mr. Thurston did not like the up and down saw. So we'll talk about that in a bit. And so Augustus Thurston bought it in 1871. He married Augusta Lowell Libby Thurston. I'm having a little confusion on their relationship. From what I understand, that is his third wife. I know that he had 2 wives, but there are some records that show that he had 3 wives. The previous wife before Augusta Lowell Libby Thurston was Hannah Meserve Thurston, and they had 3 kids. But I do not know what happened to those 3 kids. And those 3 kids lived for a little while with Augusta and then disappears from the records. I don't know what happens there. But so we think Augusta is his third wife. And so Augustus Thurston lived in Scarborough, and he was a lumberman's son of Henry Thurston. And he actually moved his house. So this is a Thurston household. He moved his house from Broadturn Road in Scarborough and hitched it on oxen and moved it to Watson Mill Road sometime around 1870. Whenever I visit the Saco schools and I talk about moving houses from here to the kids are like, what? What do you mean moving, right? It's like when you moved back in the day, you really moved, right? You moved your whole everything. So Thurston, and this is the curious part, is that here's a map in 1856 of North Saco. So if you're familiar at all with the North Saco area, all these names are very, very familiar. We see the McKinneys living up and down McKinney Road, right? And we see Watson, Stephen Watson, living on Watson Mill Road. And we see the Rickers living on Ricker Road. We see the Grant Farm on Grant Road. So all these names are very tied into the area. And also Boothby. Boothby was a very famous family in that area. Today we call it Booth Bay Park in the Lincoln Street area, but my suspicion is that is kind of a deterioration of the Boothby name. It somehow became Booth Bay Parks, just sounded nicer, but it's really Boothby Park, because that was really the Boothby neighborhood. So Stephen Watson is living here in 1856, and that's about when he started the mill over there. And then in this 1871, probably 1872 map, we see Stephen Watson still at the Nonsuch River, and Anatole Thurston moves right here on Watson Mill Road and the corner of Holmes Road, right there on Holmes and Watson Mill Road. So I'm not sure if Anatole Thurston moved to the area and was like, hey, you know what? I want to buy this mill, or was he in anticipation of buying this mill, moved over there and was like, okay, I'm ready to take on this mill. I'm not sure. But we know that he did move there for the mill, and we do have his deed. Actually, the deed is right here between Stephen Watson and Anatole Thurston in 1871. Interesting thing that we have here. This was actually donated to us by Scott Thurston, many years ago, and so we've had that in our records. So we see that was put into the records of Saco, and he bought it for $1,565 in 1871. And that was about 100 acres of land. We also have the contract that he wrote up to acquire the saws from Chase Turbine Manufacturing Company. And we also have the business card. Ansel kept the business card that when he made the deal. So he bought it from Mr. Brown there. Chase's wheel, which is the actual circular, this is the actual water feeding device where the water flows into the machine and it turns the turbine. And this is the full kit. I mean, this is like the DIY kit for a sawmill. You want a sawmill, you can buy the full kit and get yourself into business right away, right? In the 1870s. It comes with the floor, it comes with the turbine kit, and it comes with the gates, it comes with everything. So he bought this whole kit in here, the kit and caboodle, and the circular saw was a separate thing that he bought, a 52-inch circular saw. So no longer was the Saco mill the Thurston mill a up and down sawmill. It was a full-on circular mill. So during the circular mill, and we were talking about this picture earlier, possibly these people here are the employees of the Thurston mill. Thurston mill started really kicking into gear around 1900, and they started taking a lot of orders, and we do have their ledgers that they started hiring a lot of people to work at the Thurston mill, a lot of part-time workers. So the mill actually was situated right on Watson Mill Road. So here's a great picture of how the mill, the Nonsuch River flows through the culvert here, and the wood was brought up into the shed and cut and then thrown to the other side. So if you're on Watson Mill Road, when we go to the place on Saturday, you're actually parking right here, and the sign for the plaque is actually right where the mill was standing at the time before 1916. And we also have drawings that I have also displayed over there, the real drawings over there, watercolor drawings by Elmer Lesko Hobbs. Now, he lived right down the road from the mill, and he saw what it looked like in his childhood until he was and so the mill got crushed about when he was 8 or 9 years old. He drew this, painted this in his adulthood from memory of what the site looked like. And we'll talk about Elmer Lesko Hobbs in a bit, but beautiful drawings. It's actually watercolor. It looks chalky, but they actually did it with watercolors. Very nice job there. So, the Thurstons had, with Augusta, had 3 children. Elmina Augusta Thurston, never married. Mary Ellen Thurston, never married. And Albert Augustus Thurston, married. And he got married to Nellie Maud Lang Thurston. And when Albert Augustus Thurston took over the mill, that's when the really business started kicking into high gear. And then we see some examples of how that was done. These are not pictures of the mill, just using it as an example of what they used. So the gist of what we know, how they operated at Thurston Mill site, was through an interview in 1994 with Peter Scontris and Virgil Thurston. Virgil Thurston, he was 86 years old, and we'll talk a little bit about him. And from his interview is what we know mostly, and it appears in the book Saco Then and Now by Peter Scontris. And there's a great interview with Virgil. He's 86 years old, and he's talking about, and I think it happened in your house, Joyce. It says it happened in Joyce's house. And he explained that at the mill site, they used oxen to move the lumber around, right? He said we had to hire the part-time oxen. They didn't own the oxen. They loaned it from somewhere else to move the logs around. The oxen can do much heavy lifting, more than the strongest horse. So moving logs around in the site. And then by 1905, Albert graduated to the mobile steam-powered sawmill. Now this was a huge change. Now he can take this thing to other people's property and cut their wood right there and process it, and it becomes this really handy device. And his business really started exploding with the mobile steam-powered sawmill. No longer was he, and he also had a few summers where the Nonsuch River completely dried up. And he was like, you know what, I need something to keep this business rolling. So he got the steam-powered one, and fortunes changed. And then they would go out into Saco, or wherever they're delivering the wood, by horse and wagon to deliver the wood. And he said that they would go out Flag Pond Road by horse, and then out through Main Street, and then out into the Saco downtown area. So some of the businesses that they dealt with was the Biddeford Box Company, which continued way into the 1940s. You got to remember that when Anatole Thurston took over the lumber mill, that was when people started shipping things with boxes. Before it was barrels, and then now you're moving on to boxes, shook boxes. And so it's a new form of shipping, and they really kind of latched onto this new business of new form of shipping. With the Biddeford Box Company was one of their clients, and also we had the ledger over there that shows all the businesses that they were working with. Saco Lowell shops. So the Saco Lowell shops built machines for the textile mills, and they not only had them here in Saco and Biddeford, they shipped them all over the world. So the Saco Lowell, here we see a Saco Lowell machine in Saitama, Japan in 1920. Here we see a Saco Lowell machines being delivered in Brazil by train. And here are boxes of the Saco Lowell machines being stacked in Shanghai, ready to create a factory. And all of those are Saco Lowell machines. In fact, during my research, I was kind of amazed to see that in China, they're still using Saco Lowell machines from 1930s, 1940s. So the clothes that you buy at Target, they're like made by American-made machines, right, that we used a long time ago back in the 30s and 40s. So he made boxes to ship the Saco machines all over the world. And that was their biggest client, by far and large. They also had other clients, like the Diamond Match Company. Diamond Match Company, which was off of Elm Street in Bedford, burned in a spectacular fire in the 1960s, but that was part of their clients. The Pepperell Manufacturing Company, which is was the Dragon. We have the chop block for the Pepperell Manufacturing Company, and they would use the chop block to stamp the boxes that Thurston Mill would have made to ship their products out, right? And also the Boston Mail and Railroad Company. So they also probably created the tracks for the Boston Mail and Railroad Company. And the City of Saco schools. They had a contract with the City of Saco to provide heating wood for all the rural schools in Saco. So stuff like Loudon School, Sandy Brook School, Non-Such School. There was a Non-Such School. And there was all the other small little rural schools in northern Saco they provided the wood for. And usually they provide it in the summertime. It was all just one big contract in the summertime. They'd load up, and then hopefully that would last for the school for the rest of the year. And DuPont. DuPont at that time was making explosives. They're quite a different company now, but they shipped DuPont explosives in crates, and the Thurston Mill had a big contract with DuPont creating crates for explosives. And there were troubles at the mills, right, at the Thurston Mills. During my research, I saw that Albert Thurston was sued, and Albert Thurston sued his neighbors because North Saco was all woodland, and there were a lot of fires, right? And they all pointed at each other. Hey, your brush fire was out of control. I'm suing you. Hey, Albert, you were operating your mobile mill on a site down there, and it caught fire, and I'm suing you, right? So lots of disputes about local fires in the area. And we were also talking about some of the employees, like Mr. Llewellyn Appleby. There we have a lot of paperwork about Llewellyn Appleby having gotten injured at the site. And so there's a lot of course, sawmill work is not a safe thing. And so there's a lot of back and forth between insurance companies about different injuries of the employees and the insurance on that. And Mr. Virgil Thurston also said he went down to a neighbor's place in his interview that was making shingles, the Ed Merrill Shingle Mill, and he saw a guy fall into the sawmill and slice his back totally open and totally killed him. So this was a violent, right, not a safe industry, and they dealt with it. It was definitely a dramatic industry in many ways. Here are the kids of Albert, Gladys, Nellie, Myrtle. Natalie Myrtle, mostly called Myrtle most of the time, and Lawrence, and Rachel Thurston, and Victor and Virgil, the twins, right? Victor and Virgil, the twins. Victor and Virgil, they also had a dog. Interestingly, we have a dog license from 1918 for their dog Bowser. That's the twins with Bowser. Larry Thurston took the dog license out. Some interesting things to kind of glean from this, and that's, it says, allows a collie breed, age 1 year, named Bowser, to run at large all year, right? So if you should register your dog in Saco, your dog can just run wherever the heck it wants, as long as it's registered. That's fine. The downside of this is that if you do not procure a license in 10 days, then your dog is eliminated, killed, right? So very harsh laws, very harsh dog laws. So some interesting laws on dogs in the Saco during World War I, right? The Thurston twins were a sensation in the Saco area and also in college, right? They were, nobody could tell them apart, right? In the newspaper articles talk about how Thornton Academy boasts 4 sets of twins on the roster, 3 pairs of girls and 1 of boys, add troubles of the teaching staff. Interestingly, that same article talks about that Virgil and Victor twins as very studious, and they have never joined any sports, right? So, but in college, they went to Northeastern University, and they started civil engineering, and they went to New York, and they became very successful civil engineers. Right, they went way beyond the Thurston Mill. They actually worked at the Thurston Mill until they were about 11 or 12 years old. They were mostly delivering logs and doing a little bit more of the work that the children can do. We do have a business card here where either Virgil or Victor crossed out his dad's name and put VA, right? So he was obviously dealing with wood or something out there in Saco, Biddeford area. But they became track stars in college, right? And still identical, still wearing the same glasses. And they said they took all the same classes. They took all the, and of course, Northeastern University has twins of most perplexing similarity, baffles the professors, right? So they were quite the sensation, the Thurston twins. And since we are in graduation season right now, I just wanted to show you the class of 1925 Thornton Academy picture. And this is the twins class. I always play this game with my coworkers. I'm like, find the twins, right? They're actually right here. I'm not going to play that game with you guys. But they're right here. They have to do a girl-boy configuration here, and the twins are at the end over there. The twins, because they went on to college and they went on to become civil engineers, the mill went to, most of the bills just went to Lawrence Boulin, kind of an interesting middle name, Thurston. Larry is what he was preferred to be called. He married Esther Marie Nielsen Thurston. And here's a great picture of Albert and his son Lawrence Thurston. So they took over the job. And by that point, the mill is completely gone, right? The water-powered mill. And this is all mostly mobile-powered mill, mostly lumber. Lawrence really kind of dealt more with lumber. And Lawrence was also very active in Saco politics. He was an alderman. He ran for mayor. Unfortunately, he didn't get elected, but he was very active in the Saco area politics, Larry Thurston. And here is you guys. Sorry, I had to do it. So Anatole Norris, his wife actually contacted us and gave us the best wishes for this one. And there's Joyce and Avis there. And where is that? Is that on the farm?
That's on at the house.
At the house.
Where we live.
Okay. You see the pressure I'm under here? So, but it's good. It's good pressure. So they had the continuing Thurston line. But really, Rachel Thurston, she was kind of by the latter years, Rachel Thurston was really kind of the matriarch of the family. She was really kind of held it together. She was the administrator of the Thurston property. Here we have her, right? We have two different Rachels here. We have the tough, working at the mills, Rachel, and then we have the demure Thornton Academy 1922 graduation photo, Rachel, and then Rachel in her later years. Rachel was very active in the North Saco community. She also worked in many, many companies. She had worked even in Coca-Cola at one point, but she was also known mostly as the tax assessor of Saco. Right? So she was had a lot of power in Saco. Same glasses as the twins, and this hairdo, right? Some of my coworkers were like, "What's up with the Princess Leia hairdo in 1922?" So I kind of went down a hair rabbit hole last night, and this is actually called the earphone hairdo because it was supposed to copy the phone operators of that era, 1922, but it was more known as cootie garages. So, because apparently you could hide your lice in there. So your cootie garages. So if there's anything that you take away from my talk today, I hope it's the cootie garage. So cootie garage. And then that's 1922. By 1923, 1924, the flapper bob cut was all the rage and the cootie garage was out. We also have quilts done by Rachel Thurston. And we have various things that Rachel Thurston and Joyce have given us over the years from the site, including a washboard that was at the site, and the butter, packing butter. I know Joyce has talked about the packing butter in Peter Scottris's book, actually. You're quoted in there. And we have the ledger, we have the deed, and we have the Elmer Lesko Hobbs things. And these, believe it or not, are the baby bottles of the twins, Virgil and Victor. And this is Nellie's breast pump, right? Except it's missing the bulb, the bulb section of it. Interesting selection of items here. But an interesting selection of what you would see in the turn of the century rural household, right? And you would see a breast pump, especially if you have twins, and especially if this is your fifth and sixth child, right? You bring the breast pump, and I got twins. Oh my gosh, right? So we have various artifacts from the Thurston sites. The Hobbs house. So if you are hiking with us on Saturday and you're going down we're going down Watson Mill Road, you'll see a red house on the top of the hill just before you go down the dip to the site. That is known as the Hobbs house and has been there for well over 100 years. And this is what it looked like. So David Bedell, who is a descendant of the Hobbs family, gave us these glass plate negative photos, great photos of the area. And so that is what the house looked like there. And the Hobbs family was very tight with the Thurston family back in the day. And back to the freshet of 1916. So at North Saco, the Thurston sawmill was reported washed away. Also the big bridge over the brook nearby, the abutment being badly damaged. So May of 1916, actually that year, 1916, they had record snowfalls in the Saco Biddeford area. And when springtime came, the rivers were just flowing like crazy. And the Thurston mill did not make it. It got totally crushed and washed away. And interestingly, the Hobbs family, here's the Hobbs again up here, and this is actually their back side of the house over there, growing, I believe there's pumpkins in that site there. They actually took the parts of the sawmill that was wrecked at Thurston at Nonsuch, and they kind of salvaged all the parts, and they refashioned a sawmill, a portable sawmill out of the machinery that was at the Nonsuch River. I guess the Thurstons were like, yeah, go ahead, just take what you want. They were so devastated by the loss, and the Hobbs kind of refashioned it into these things. That's Elmer Hobbs right there, the artist over here, and that is his older brother Raymond. So there's Raymond with his dad, Milton Hobbs, playing with their new toy. The school that these kids would have gone to would have been the Nonsuch School, which would have been on Watson Mill and Grant Road, right at that end section over there, was a one-room schoolhouse known as Nonsuch School, Saco District School number 6. And it was a one-room schoolhouse that lasted well into probably in the 1930s. From my understanding, the schoolhouse was lifted from its present location and moved to McKinney Road, and it still stands there today. Looks nothing like a schoolhouse now. But we see all the names of North Saco, like Grant, right? Obviously the farmers' kids. We see the Libbies, we see the Sawyers, and Hobbs. Again, we see Gladys Hobbs and Raymond Hobbs just up the road, and the McKinneys again. I date this to 1920 because with the Hobbs photos that we had, I can tell that Raymond here is about 12 and Gladys here is about 8 or 9, so that places it right around 1920, North Saco School. Very interesting photo. And the Thurstons and the Hobbs and everyone in North Saco would have gone to the North Saco Congregational Church, also known as the Heath Road Meeting House. It has been there since 1868, and it looks very much like it did back then. It has not changed much at all. The Thurstons were pretty involved with the church, especially Rachel. Rachel was very involved with the North Saco Church. And also, I understand Larry did the floor work in the church as well. So the Thurston family was very connected to the church. This is from about 1910, Children's Day. And again, it looks very much like it is today. Of course, the church existed long before, like many churches, probably 100 years ago, until they built the building and they moved around everywhere. Yes?
Eric got married in that.
Oh, yes, and that was what I was going to mention too, is that many Thurstons have been married there. And I understand even Albert wanted to kind of do a anniversary ceremony at the church at one time too. Very interesting. What's also interesting is when you look at the newspapers back in the 1890s, I don't know if it's this church, but I don't think so because this is the Congregationalist church, but there were full immersion baptisms on the Nonsuch River in the 1890s. And I think it was probably the Baptist church went out to the Thurston Mill site and dumped people on Sundays, and they were all like September, August dates. So
I was gonna say, I hope so.
yeah, it was during the summertime. And for leisure, I don't know about the Thurstons, but I know the Grants were regular attendees of the Joy Valley Dance Club. So there was a dance club. So hard to imagine, but there was a dance club on Old Buxton Road, right? At the corner of Joy Valley and Old Buxton Road, and it was run by a Summer Cloth, and it was right during the Prohibition eras, 1930s. So it was pretty much a speakeasy, and if you look at the newspapers back then, the cops were there all the time, right? And there were all this time, and all this articles about, oh my gosh, and girls were thrown in the airs, exposing their legs, and it's so dark in there, and so kind of a horror story for the North Saco people. But interestingly, during the Prohibition era, Summer Cloth was getting harassed so bad by the Saco authorities that he moved Joy Valley Hall 75 feet across the Buxton line so he wouldn't get harassed by the Saco authorities anymore. And he announced this on a New Year's Eve party, and of course everyone's like, yeah, right? It was a big thing. Partying in North Saco, hard to believe, but that was the thing. And we have the Grant diaries from the 1930s, the Grant farm diaries, and they talk a lot about Joy Valley and the shenanigans that happened there. Getting to the end here, what I kind of wanted to see, I saw Larry's obit, and I know Joyce also mentioned this, that there was an airfield, that he built some kind of airfield in North Saco, and they said it was off Watson Mill Road. So I pulled up, we actually have a collection of aerial photography of Saco area in 1966. It goes all around. It's really, really cool. If you ever want to come and see your house in 1966, let me know. But I marked out the areas here. We see Nonsuch River here, crossing Watson Mill Road here. So the farm property would have been in this kind of cleared area. And Joyce kind of pointed out that it was probably here, right? And that would make sense. It's kind of this cleared, very flat land that kind of goes up. And because, that area kind of dips like this, that it would make sense that he would have had the airfield on that flat top right there. When I moved in that neighborhood 20 years ago, it was all part of Grant Farms corn fields. When the corn king, unfortunately when he passed 5 years ago, when the corn king, Grant, was growing all the corns out there, and then when he passed away, now there are 3 houses on one side here and 3 houses on the other side here. So it's been completely transformed into residential neighborhood. So kind of an interesting look on how the area kind of looks. Still very, very rural. Actually not much has changed over there, but they are still adding lots of places. In 1999, the Saco Valley Land Trust acquired the lands from Rachel Thurston. Rachel Thurston passed away that same year in 1999, as well as the twin Virgil, also in 1999. So it was really kind of an end of an era for the Thurston family, and moving on to this next chapter of giving the land to the people of Saco. And really, it's a beautiful trail. It's really kind of a gem in Saco. It's unspoken about. Nobody really knows about it. The only reason I know about it is because I live right down the road from it, but it's this very peaceful location where you can hear the river. The river's running at a pretty good clip right now because the water level is high right now. But people have done various things who care about the area. Like there's the children's group that goes out there, and they have done some cleaning out there. We also have put out various history sites out here. We actually updated this recently. People have put out benches out there. So a nice place to hang out. And when I say hike, it's kind of exaggerated. It's not really a hike. It's kind of like a nice little stroll around the woods, kind of like a half mile, somewhere around there. And it does stop. There's like an area where you just can't go further. But I hope you enjoy it when you come by on Saturday. I'm hoping the weather's going to be nice. Parking situation there is a little bit sketchy. You can only probably fit about four cars maybe, max, right? So if you can carpool, I would encourage it. And it might get a little difficult. There's some fishermen there. There is trout there. They released 100 trout into the Nonsuch River in April. And that's the count right now. They'll probably give more. They said 10 inchers. So, and I saw one picture of a guy who did fish out a 10-inch trout out of there. And alewife, of course, pretty common in there. But I've never seen fish looking down in there. So if you see any in there, consider yourself lucky. Like a lot of rivers in Maine, it has that kind of orange iron tint to it. It still looks very nice. Right, so that concludes my Thurston Mill presentation. I hope that this gets you excited about coming by on Sunday. If you have any questions, I'm sorry, Saturday. Sorry. Sorry, I got a cotton mouth at this point now. I'm talking so. Yes. Any questions about the area, or anybody want to add, especially the Thurston family, or?
No, I think you covered it very well. I learned something.
Yeah.
Oh, good. It's a very interesting area. You know, the North Saco. It's its own bubble. If you look at the old newspapers, North Saco News is divided from Saco News. So North Saco is this really kind of like this alien planet world where, you know, I want to hear news from North Saco, right? And it's like the happenings in North Saco, and it would be stuff like, you know, so-and-so sued the other for burning his land, and, you know, and so very exciting news from North Saco, different from Saco proper news. And of course, today, right, there is no dance club or anything like that. The church is really hardly ever used. In fact, the church was also part of the North Saco Grange, which Rachel Thurston was very involved in. And, you know, but there is no Grange to be spoken of in North Saco now. But there is a Grange in Saco downtown. So it's kind of weird where, you know, why don't, you know, the Grange is an agricultural society, really belongs in North Saco, but it did not last very long. So, so they had their own kind of community there, their own school, their own church, their own dance hall, but right today we don't really consider North Saco. It's just all kind of Buxton, Saco, all continuous. So it's interesting to see how they created their own community in the North Saco region and created their own life. Yes?
I would mention one thing.
Sure.
You talked about the mill that's on the river.
Yeah.
And how it was washed away, and absolutely that happened. That would have happened when my grandfather, Lawrence, was a younger man.
Okay.
But he rebuilt another mill
Oh, he did?
on Watson Mill Road, right near where his house was, between his house
Okay.
and my great-grandfather's, the farmhouse.
The Anatole
homestead.
house, yeah.
So there was another mill site.
Interesting.
It wasn't powered by water,
Right.
but there was another mill site, and when I grew up, that's, you know, I would see him out there working.
Very cool.
And it's no longer there. But
So it'd be right there on the Holmes
no,
Road?
it's
and-
on Watson Mill Road.
Watson
So
Mill
if you
Road.
come down, is it Holmes Road? If you come down the hill towards your house, is it Holmes Road? Yeah, so if you come down from that intersection of Holmes Road, on Watson Mill Road, heading down the hill, it's just down on the right. If you go back to that photo, yeah, right there. Oh,
I'm sorry.
so, excuse me. I don't
So,
know.
So Ansel Thurston moved his house
Exactly.
right
It was-
here.
It was
Yeah.
it was right there.
Yeah.
So my grandfather built a house right up here, a small house.
Okay.
Here's the farmstead. The mill that my grandfather built was right here, and the airstrip that you're talking about was right in here. There's a big field,
okay.
there. And small planes. Somebody named Ricky, you remember Ricky? Some guy named Ricky used to land there.
So it's near Ricker Road here.
He was, my grandparents.
So Ricker
house was
Road, you
right
can
there.
see, it's really this picturesque where they have the trees lining on both sides all the way
yeah.
down, and there's like a farmhouse at the end
Yeah.
there. It's kind of this really amazing like Maine like painting scene here, but, yeah. So, and there's in this area, still today is a very large, expansive field. So that totally makes sense. Thank you for clearing that up. Yes.
Anatole,
Yes.
thank you. I think it was a very entertaining
Oh.
weaving of history and family information.
Oh, thank you, thank
Great
you.
job. I also want to point out that across the road from the Thurston Mills
Yeah.
site is the Gannon property, which is owned by
Yes.
the Land Trust. And that property is slowly being developed. It's a longer trail than what is on Thurston Mills, but over time, I think it'll be quite nice for pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, so, understand the land trust has more land up, towards that side. So the North Saco Land Trust, there was, I think on that side that you're talking about, Saco Middle School students kind of worked on that area at one time, I think. There was like a little project,
They did some fundraising.
some fundraising for it, yeah.
But Tom has been volunteering and he's been doing quite a bit of work at the
Yes.
Thurston site.
So Tom, Tom kindly showed me all the other secret areas of Thurston Mill that I was not aware of. But Tom has been regularly going to the site, cleaning it up, getting rid of the debris on the sides of everything, and really keeping it a really nice place to keep walking around. And that's how we keep these places the way they are, is through the volunteer work of people like Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to leave, but this was
Yes.
very nice, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much.
This is priceless. We have a graduation party.
Yes.
Not in the cabin.
Enjoy. Yes, I'm done, so. And if you want to come to the site, please feel free to come to the site. Again, it's not a strenuous hike, but please do all the regular things like put on good grippy shoes. I don't know how it's going to be after the